What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. Hope y'all are doing well on this Friday afternoon. I wanted to talk about a player that I think the Kansas City Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl without. There's a lot of players you could say this for that the Kansas City Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl without, but a player that I wanted to shout out because I believed in him the day that the Chiefs acquired him, and that is wide receiver Kadarius Toney. When the Kansas City Chiefs gave up a third round and a sixth round pick for Kadarius Toney back at the trade deadline in October, a lot of people had mixed feelings about it. There were people like me who were super excited about it because I loved Kadarius Toney coming out of the draft and thought he would be awesome in the Chiefs offense, but he just ended up getting overdrafted to the Giants, and it just wasn't a good marriage. And things didn't work out there, and the Giants, they let him go for a third-round pick, and people were saying, well, if the Giants are letting him go only this early into his NFL career for a third-round pick, then maybe it's not such a good trade. But I'm a firm believer in a change of scenery is sometimes really good for players and all that they need to succeed. And for Kadarius Toney, that couldn't be more true. And Toney, even though the injury concern is still there and will be there going into next season when we talk about this Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver room, Toney would be the most talented receiver in the Chiefs receiver room. I feel pretty confident in saying that. Maybe they draft someone, and you guys would disagree with that later on, but I think Kadarius Toney is probably the most talented guy they have on their roster right now at receiver. And right after the Chiefs traded for Toney, we saw flashes of that. His first game against the Titans, he had a couple good plays, and he recorded his first catch in that game. And then against the Jaguars, we saw him really explode onto the scene. He ended up scoring his first NFL touchdown and his first touchdown with the Chiefs in that game against the Jaguars. But then the hamstring injury flared up again against the Los Angeles Chargers, and Toney was out for a while, and people go, oh, here we go. This is what we were afraid of when we traded for Toney. And you know what? I'll tell you right now, Kadarius Toney, because of what he did in the Super Bowl, could end up not playing another snap due to injury with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that trade would still be worth it. And this is a totally separate conversation, but if you look at Brett Veach's history with third-round picks, I'd be pretty comfortable trading a third-round pick for Kadarius Toney 10 times out of 10. But nonetheless, Kadarius Toney ended up coming back healthy, and he was integral to the Chiefs' postseason run. He had several huge plays despite really not ever playing that much. Like in the Super Bowl, he played like less than 20 snaps, but those snaps that he was on the field, he was drawing attention from the defense. He was going in motion and creating a distraction because, this guy is a weapon. He's a real weapon. Anytime he's on the field, you got to take him seriously. And I know that the Kansas City Chiefs, about 2/3 of the time that Toney has been on the field for them, they've been utilizing him or targeting him with the ball. Patrick Mahomes has an insane amount of trust in Kadarius Toney, and Kadarius Toney really just walked into the building when he first got traded here, and there was that immediate trust in him just because he's so talented. Him and Mahomes quickly developed a good chemistry, and Mahomes started throwing back shoulder passes to him and things of that nature, and that's when I knew, this could be a special connection. But let's go back to Super Bowl 57 and why the Kansas City Chiefs don't win without Kadarius Toney. Well, one, he had a touchdown, and a touchdown helps in that game. Of course, it was a quick pass to Toney. It wasn't anything super impressive. It was more of a great play call by Andy Reid. But they trusted Toney to run that play, and that's what's important. And Toney in motion, again, that is a really big advantage for your offense. He's very deceptive in the way he moves around. And, he took that defensive back inside because the defensive back thought that Toney was going to end up lining up inside and running a route from there. But instead, he transitions right back out to the flats. Mahomes hits him for that quick pass, and he walks in for a touchdown. And then, of course, there was the big punt return. And that punt return will be viewed as one of the best plays in Chiefs Super Bowl history because it almost pretty much won the game for the Chiefs. Without that big punt return, we had trust in their offense, but, driving, 60 yards is a lot more difficult than driving from 5 yards out. Now, maybe you would argue differently for this Chiefs offense, who we know have struggled in short yardage this past season, but that's besides the point. Toney, that was a huge play from him. And what was really impressive about that play, not only, Toney and the result of the play and how he was able to make people miss. But most people in that situation, if you guys go back and watch, most people in that situation would just sprint with the ball. They're super excited. They're about to get a big punt return. They'd just be running as fast as they can to the end zone. They're full of adrenaline. But Toney, he runs a 4.3 40-yard dash. The dude has, damn near elite speed. But he didn't use all that speed. Instead, he ran at just the right speed that allowed the team's special teams unit to set up their blocking so Toney could have that far of a run back. And that was a super smart play by Toney, and something that I think people aren't appreciating enough is that Toney ran at just the right speed, that he had the perfect blocks to run behind. And to me, that's why it was such an impressive play. And the Chiefs simply don't win the Super Bowl without Kadarius Toney, and that's why trading a third-round draft pick for him will always be worth it, no matter what happens. Kadarius Toney could end up not being... Kadarius Toney, hypothetically, he could be cut before the Chiefs season next year, and that trade would still be worth it because it ultimately brought the Chiefs a Super Bowl championship. I think pretty much all of us would trade a third-round pick for a Super Bowl. And overall, I'm just really happy for Kadarius Toney because, again, I believed in the guy since we traded for him. He had been through a lot with the Giants, and they gave up on him pretty quickly. People doubted him because he didn't really produce with the Giants all that much. He was often injured. Then he comes over to Kansas City, a system that knows how to use him, and he was immediately a productive player. And I see a lot of, Kadarius Toney didn't do much for them. He didn't really contribute. Well, when you say stuff like that, that just tells me you didn't watch the games, because although Kadarius Toney's stat line this year wasn't anything spectacular, I mean, the dude barely cracked 200 yards from scrimmage, but he came up with several big plays for the Chiefs all season long, and he was a touchdown machine late in the regular season. They don't win the Super Bowl without him, guys. I mean, it's as simple as that. And Toney is an example for other guys who are maybe stuck in situations where they could maybe do better. And, he comes over to the Chiefs, has a really good season with the Chiefs, despite all the injuries and bad luck. And it also just makes Kansas City look like a destination for free agents and other players, just because they just have that history of reviving former early round picks. There's also the aspect that they win championships, and when you have a team that is constantly in contention and they have that winning culture, players want to come into that. And this doesn't just apply to Kadarius Toney, but I talked about it earlier this week. Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Reed, Carlos Dunlap, MVS. These are guys that came over and they go, wow, like, this is just different here. This is different than other teams in the league. And the Kansas City Chiefs just provide that opportunity for players to win a championship. And most importantly, they'll find the best way to utilize you, like they did with Kadarius Toney, like they did with MVS, who had a career high in receptions this year, like they did with Justin Reed in the secondary. So that's what's so special about this Chiefs organization. And I know I'm kind of going off on a different tangent here, and this video was initially about Kadarius Toney, but I do think you guys can look for him to be a big factor in next year's offense. He caught on pretty quickly here. I'll be excited to see what he can do. With another year in this offense, having a training camp and OTAs and stuff like that, and also an offseason under Rick Burkholder and his training staff to maybe get Toney's body right so his body can hold up for a full NFL season. Toney's impact cannot be understated this year, and I think Chiefs fans should be really excited about him and grateful for him. And I know he's grateful for the Chiefs. He's talked about several times how this transition to the Chiefs has just been so good for him personally and his career, and everything's just worked out for all parties, and it's really a good thing to see. But that's all I got for this one, guys. I just wanted to talk about how important Kadarius Toney was to this Super Bowl winning Chiefs team. But I would like to hear from you guys. What are your expectations for Kadarius Toney next year? And how impressed were you with his performance with the Chiefs this year and in the postseason? Let me know. But all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!